Okay, so I left off kind of addressing the fact that you might have noticed the term Aryan. Okay, and I will always mention this that Persia is now Iran or Iran. Iran means uh, land of Aryans, Iran. Okay, um, and Aryans are in here. We have it's a language branch called Indo-European. Yes, it's a very I mean, you might look at India and you might not see much similarities between our cultures. You might look at Iran, even aside from Islam that comes later. But as European culture, um, there there are links. Okay, and Hitler then kind of took the idea of this kind of Aryan Germanic people. Many neo-Nazi groups actually even see Iran as an ally. David Duke, who is a former KKK member, is quite favorable to Iran based on racial solidarity in his mind. I think over the issues of even religion. It's a tragic and interesting kind of development that took place starting with the 19th century into the early 20th century. Some of it's based on actual historical things, and then of course some of these ideas kind of blow up into this whole kind of fanciful idea. There's not an Aryan people as much as there's Aryan peoples, and there is branches to this. Okay, so just had to throw that your way. Any questions on that you want to? It's another one of those things. Again, please feel free to contact me, and I'll go more into detail later. So, around the 16th century BCE, many of them moved into northern India and they became dominators. And as we see in many different cultures, just like with the Anglo-Saxons and the British Isles, the Anglo-Saxons are going to dominate over the Celts there, the Celtic peoples, right? So the word Welsh comes from Anglo-Saxon Wallace, meaning slave or foreigner, and they're going to subjugate those peoples. And there's still some of that historical baggage in the British Isles, even though it's Britain, but it still has a kind of a domination by England, right? And England is really kind of seen as the dominating factor of the British Isles. In India, you have the Aryans coming in and really dominating over a lot of the cultures there and becoming kind of the dominant one that creates the narrative and sets the tone for culture and politics in India. Okay, so they basically ended up prevailing, but also having many small kingdoms, because as we mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, it's a land that's hard to govern with one ruler, and so they had separate warrior kings called rajas. Okay, now talking a little bit about their religion and culture, as I've been focusing on that, is a rise of Vedic culture. So in India, much of what we know about this culture comes from the Vedas. These are sacred hymns composed by Aryan priests with their own religious rituals. Originally is not in writing, and they were made in a way easy to remember. That's with many things in all cultures, right? That you're going to have memorized a lot of poems or songs that are considered sacred because it's easier to pass those along. All right, so what are the Vedas? They're religious texts, but they also give cultural information. And so basically, it comes late, but around the 9th century BCE is when they were written down in Sanskrit. Sanskrit's the original language of these texts. So that's kind of the Latin of India, okay, Sanskrit. Now there's 4 Vedas that they have. And just here, give you an example, the Rig Veda, which is a creation hymn, it says, "There was neither non-existence nor existence then. There was neither the realm of space nor the sky which is beyond. What stirred? Where? In whose protection? Was there water bottomlessly deep? There was neither death nor immortality then. Whence this creation has arisen, Perhaps it formed itself, or perhaps it did not. The one who looks down on it is the highest heaven. Only he knows, or perhaps he does not know. I mean, this is, to me, an amazing aspect of the Vedas. What they're really saying is, right, I mean, we all, and you'll hear me explore this over and over in other topics, who created God? And if God always existed, that's no more of a conundrum to our brain than to say that we came out of nothing from an evolutionary aspect, right? Either way, we got to come up, we're hitting our heads up against some sort of something that can't penetrate our understanding of reality. And so here they're saying that only God would know, basically, or perhaps he doesn't even know the actual origins of his own existence. I mean, this is the first text that I've ever came across that actually came up with the idea that maybe even the Almighty might not even know where he came from and all of this came from. Okay, so just thought I'd point that out. All right. I just thought I'm going to skip this actually. Okay, so Vedic religion and society. Now, they had the Varna or caste system. That's one of the more infamous and Western conceptions of India, right? You had classes, but I guarantee you, in many cultures and Nordic cultures, there were classes. There's hierarchies in society. So they had the priests, which were the Brahmins. They had the warrior class, caste, which is the Kshatriya, and the Vaishya were the commoners. And then you had the Sudra. The Sudra initially were conquered, the initial conquered people, and they were used for menial labor. And then they have even subcastes called jatis. And so this is a quite disturbing thing to modern ideas of Western civilization, because we have this idea that there should be upward mobility, that people shouldn't be fated into certain things. Now, certain Indian scholars claim that it's the Europeans are the ones that imagined and kind of solidified this idea under British colonialism, that castes would be rigid and they couldn't break out of them. And so I have a book on India where one scholar says that the actual working of caste in Indian society permitted much variation, which naturally the authors of the law books did not wish to admit. That's actually up for debate. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a debate right now from a historical point of view, if the caste system was super rigid or if there was more crisscrossing or more upward mobility and chances to kind of caste hop than we're led to believe. And I think that's not, there's not a consensus on that. At least that's my understanding right now. Okay. So let's talk about 3 important Vedic concepts. Samsara, reincarnation, transmigration of souls. There's the eternal spiritual soul core called the Atman. And each person is going to have a series of lives, okay? And then there's Dharma, the faithful performance of duties pertaining to one's caste or station in life. Buddhism is going to transform that a little bit. So you might have heard that in the Buddhist concept, which we're going to cover later. And then you have karma, one's fate or destiny in the next incarnation based on performance of one's dharma in the current life. So there is this cycle, there's a cyclicalness that is believed that people are going through, all life forms, animals, all life, okay? And these are 3 very important concepts in this society. All right, I will actually end here, and we'll move on to the next section, next lecture.